Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I've already introduced. What we'll do is we'll first start off by, I think, each of you all speaking a little bit about yourselves and what you all do, and then we will take it. Yeah, quick round of introduction, couple of minutes each.
Is it on? Hey, hi everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Saikat Mondal. I lead the mergers and acquisitions and strategy at Nazara Technologies. I have been with the gaming industry for the last 5 years or so, moving out of consulting, working with Garena Mobiles and Glue Mobiles, which is now part of Electronic Arts. Almost all my 5 years are spent into product strategy, corporate development, and business strategy. Uh, yeah, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Jayraj. I'm part of the investment team at Kalaari. Have been looking at gaming for the last 1 year. Prior to that, worked at a couple of startups. Have a deep research-based background. Have spent months understanding gaming and the evolution from an investor's point of view. So just I think I've been fortunate enough to kind of witness the growth of this ecosystem and interact with all of you here. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Ramanjot. I work at corporate development and strategy team of Winzo. I primarily look at building financial and strategic relationship with the developer ecosystem in India and globally for Winzo. Uh, we have been working with a variety of development studios, and we have seen over the past 2.5 years that the game development ecosystem in India has really developed, and we would love to be a part of this and to help the ecosystem grow further and become a global force.
Thanks, Machaiah. Hi, everyone. I'm Nidhi Bavishi. I'm part of the investment team at Lumikai. We're India's first sector-focused gaming and interactive media fund, and we essentially look at early-stage bets. So everything from pre-product up till Series A is what we ideally look at. And I grew up playing games, and I've also worked in the US markets, looking at the interactive media industry, specifically towards equity stocks and managing a few $1 million for the university's endowment fund. So gaming has been part of my DNA for a very long time, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Indian gaming startup ecosystem grows.
Thanks, Nidhi. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we'll start off with the first round. I think we'll just dive deep into like funding and portfolio and how companies really work around it, or what do you look at as investor publishers, because we've got a lot of young developers here who would really like to understand how the game is played, right? So Jayraj, the first question is for you. You have a diverse portfolio as Kalaari, being Kalaari, and you of course have some decent, I mean not decent, but investments in gaming, Bobby Play being something I can remember off the top of my head. How do you see the next few years in gaming in India?
So yeah, we've been fortunate to see, at least the evolution of RMG from the start point with Dream 11 and Winzo, and I think having other companies like, emerging stars like Bombay Play, Studio Sera. So we're seeing, at least from a gamer India as a gaming market standpoint, we see, we've already been seeing this trend where we are a DAO farm, right? But the idea is now we have people who are starting to warm up to paying, right? 5 years ago, people didn't pay for any subscriptions on Netflix, but now you have everything going on there. And what I see is, just as a personal reference, I see the younger generation was the first to adopt Facebook and these social media platforms in India, and now you see your parents being actively using it on a daily basis, right? So very funny story, I was, just this weekend, I was getting a haircut, and my barber, he doesn't know what I do, but he just asked me, do you know what gaming laptop I can buy for less than 50,000? And I'm like, why do you need a gaming laptop? So he just went on to tell me that, look at this is my YouTube channel. I love playing PUBG, and I thought I'm going to start streaming. So the idea being here, people love games. It's the most interactive form of engagement, and India is really warming up to that. So at least compared to a US, where you went from PC and console to mobile, we're going to go from a larger funnel from mobile to PC and console. And the same way, I think we can look at it as from mid-core to hardcore, right? And that transition is already beginning to happen. So I think we're very excited to see how these other ecosystems are really going to kind of shoot up.
Thanks, Jayraj. Nidhi, I know you're a dedicated gaming fund, but how do you think the gaming startup ecosystem is growing? The Lumikai report, mentioned 2.8 billion invested in the last 2 years alone. So how do you see that growing?
Yeah, sure. I think some really interesting points from what Jayraj mentioned. About 4 to 5 years ago, we had only 25 studios in the country, and now we have north of 500 studios based out of India. And he mentioned that we've been predominantly looked at as a DAO farm, but that's fast changing. IAP market is actually the fastest growing category within gaming, growing at 34% CAGR. And what changed with Netflix, if you look at it, it's the pricing. They changed, making localized pricing easy. Pricing points are easier for people to buy if it's 99 rupees, the basic subscription. And Netflix is now replicating the same model in 116 countries globally because they saw success in India. And so it's a multitude of things that worked out. Macroeconomically, if you look, cheaper smartphones, cheaper data, access to better digital payments infrastructure, and increased propensity to pay. So Jayraj mentioned this, people will always be playing games. Go to the airport, see people on a plane just before departing or as soon as people turn on their phones when they arrive. Everyone, almost every other person is playing a game. I have seen this, I've seen other people do the same. So we're very excited. We're about, I think, 570 million gamers in the country, and we're possibly the youngest country in the world. And of this, 120 million people are paying for games. And that average order value is about $20 a year. So we're, as a fund, really excited to see what happens in the future.
Nice. I know, like, a part of playing games, I think, has become universal right now, like what Jayraj was saying, and everybody else seems to be playing games. Saikat, Nazara is probably one of India's most inspiring stories, right? I mean, every developer at some level, like it's a yardstick that you want to achieve. I mean, like a gaming company has gone public, but what? And I know you work very closely with the ecosystem. At least you on a personal level, and you're very passionate about helping developers, helping the ecosystem. What are some of the things that that you are doing to help from a publishing and investment initiative? What are you all doing really to help the ecosystem grow better, and what are some of those things that you can tell us about?
Right. So as you may be aware that we are one of the leading players. We are the only listed gaming company in India which has presence into multiple verticals, not just gaming. So gaming is just one part of it. Within gaming, we start very early with kids edutainment applications, which are primarily subscription-based business models, which is vastly different from free-to-play models, right? Then we have free-to-play models, and then we have real money skill-based gaming. So we have multitude of games within the gaming vertical itself. But in addition to gaming, it gets deeper, right? You are also participating in esports, which is primarily into community creation, events management, and a bunch of other things, right? And on top of it, we have an ad tech and a media vertical, which basically helps the ecosystem players target players onto your top of the funnel, manage the player experience overall through game and product life cycles, etc. So these are some of the skill sets that we have very carefully handpicked and created in our portfolio that is, as an ecosystem, wholesome, that can help any partners that we are associating ourselves with. Now, talking on to partnerships, we primarily have till now taken the investments route. We have invested in a bunch of good companies, including Kidopia being one of them. We invested very, very early when they were doing roughly $2.5 million worth of revenues. But today they have just 17x their overall revenues in the last 2.5, 3 years, and they have really, really pivoted their subscription models, their pricing, their product philosophies, etc. We have also helped companies like in the media domain, like Sportskeeda, to continuously grow on their portfolios, right? So the way we look at helping developers creating and growing their portfolio companies is by creating communities, looking at a bunch of things that a developer may not be focusing themselves upon, right? So when you look at publishing, there are a bunch of activities in addition to development of the game. There is UA, there's community, there is App Store optimization, there is localization. In fact, pricing is one of them. Taking on from Jayraj's point, it's not that India or Indians are not paying. If you look at Garena and Free Fire or PUBG as a game and a genre, they have made significant amount of money from India with the same player base that other players enjoy. So it is also about pricing, and it's a chicken and egg problem, right? So we help them understand what pricing works or how pricing works, what are the various elasticities regarding that, right? And how you can maximize those revenues. So it's basically entering into the very, very, very deep levels of how to think about product, how to think about communities, and how to basically grow your product. So that's one part of it. And the second part on the publishing side, we are continuously and actively engaging with a lot of partners, helping them crack this vertical. And the third, of course, is partnering with players like IGDC to continuously help and develop the ecosystem so that we do our share of the community that we are trying to build.
Thanks for that, Saikat. I mean, at IGDC, I know all of them we work very closely with all of them and on almost all the companies in India. The idea is that we're just a conduit and we will act as a conduit to help enable the growth of the ecosystem in India. That's the idea. Ramanjot, for you, you've been working with a lot of studios. What do you think, like, how is the quality now compared to the initial days?
So over last 2.5, 3 years, we've observed that the quality has definitely improved. Initially it was mostly hyper casual games, single player games. Now, as the Indian audience has matured, so has the development studio ecosystem has matured, and they're mostly focusing now on multiplayer games, mid-core games. But there's still a long way to go if we compare it to the global studios like Supercell or Ubisoft. There's a lot of difference, and that's because how the consumers have matured in those markets versus our market. So yeah, we've seen the quality improve, and we do believe that there's still a lot of scope to do that, and we are working with the studios to bridge that gap to do our share in improving the quality and going further.
Okay, a follow-up question to that is, how do you think international studios looking at Indian studios for content, what are they looking for in terms of partnerships?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, international studios do look at India as a very, fast growing market, given it's the market which has the largest number of downloads globally. And this is the only market which did not degrow after the COVID wave. Most of the developed markets have degrown. But they don't know what content would the Indian audience like, right? It's still a black box to them. They know that some of the games like PUBG and Free Fire have worked really well, and India has contributed a lot in their revenue, but they still feel that monetization is a very big challenge in this market. Hardly few games work, so they are mostly looking at Indian companies to understand what is the kind of content that the audience will like, and what is it that they should build for this consumer base.
Okay. Saikat, I know you acquired a UK-based company, or there was a deal with a UK-based company recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know you all also have like a lot of international presence. Follow up to Ramanjot, like, what do you think? Like, what are international publishers that you are going to interact with a lot more? What are they looking for in terms of an Indian market or Indian content?
So as Ramanjot mentioned, I think a bunch of things actually stands out. One, how to cater to the Indian palate is something, I mean, the tastes, the preferences, the choices is something that these foreign developers are at times looking at. The second thing that they're looking at is, of course, to localize and contextualize the game for Indian audiences, right? Pricing is a very significant factor. Along with pricing, of course, there are multiple other factors, such as, how should you change the technology behind it so that it's fundamentally operating on every single mobile that an Indian has, and an average Indian has, right? Free Fire did really well, primarily because it was fundamentally operational, or could be operational in every single device that you could see on any average Indian's hand. So they are looking at these aspects. Along with that, they're also looking at, and I keep on coming to this point, communities. I think I cannot stress more on the importance of communities, especially after the recent changes in the ad tech vertical, wherein targeting has become increasingly difficult with IDFA deprecation. That is an industry-wide phenomena, of course, but they are looking for communities and how to build those communities in and of India. Looking for esports partnerships, of course, with Nordwin. Nordwin is the largest esports player in India, that is with Nazara. So they're looking for esports partnerships, and that can help them build those communities.
Yeah. Thanks, Saikat. I think community is very, very important. Sidetrack, please join the IGDC Discord channel as well. Yeah, don't forget. Nidhi and Jayraj, what excites you guys most? Is it studios making content for Indian audience or studios making content for the global audience?
Sure. So yeah, I'll go first, Nidhi, you can add. I think for us, there's no one better than the other. When we try to find any opportunities and teams that we want to kind of work closely with, the idea is how well do they know who they're going after, right? The concept that they're creating, a lot of times, sometimes founders can into a limbo where they love what they're doing, but they really don't know if it's going to be loved by the segment they're going after. So, and that can apply, like we talk about, it's everyone's passion, I'm sure, in this room to kind of take Indian games to the global audience. Your Indian themes really need to go out. But will they work in that segment is still to be tested at scale. Of course, Raji did it to an extent, and we have more players really going after that. But it's going to be not just the storyline and the elements, but what they pick. So I think for us, like I said, it's not one better than the other. We're trying to look at the particular segment, whether what type of game it is, whether it's a console, PC, mobile, right? And how well do they know that segment? Does that excite us as a scalable opportunity? But yeah, Nidhi, anything you can add?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. For us at Lumikai, it's both. We have companies in our portfolio that are building from India for the world. We have Bombay Play that essentially caters to, and which is also part of Kalaari's portfolio, essentially catering to a Western audience. And we also have companies like GigaFun Studios, Studio Sera that are majorly building for an Indian audience. But Raji has also done this. Raji essentially was for a Western audience, starting with PC console, and now they've gotten part of the Netflix broader gaming umbrella, and they're now on iOS and Android as well. I think another way to look at it is that Indians are no longer just very hyper localized as an audience. We are global citizens and we consume global content. China around 2004 was an importer of games, and for the longest time, I think still till around 2019, 2020, India has been an importer of games. And now we're drastically seeing that change. Around late 2000s, China was, I think 60% of that market was building games from China. So Tencent changed the market, and we're seeing those inflection points being replicated in India. So hopefully we see more games come out of India and shine through the global market.
So then, how far are we seeing Indian studios in the top 10 grossing games in the world? I mean,
I would say not too far. So there's this interesting stat. If you look at the top 25 grossing apps on the Play Store today, more than 40% of them are games from just for India. And globally, this would be around 55-60%, and we're leaning more and more closer to what the global average is. So that means Indians are paying for games, and we have a lot of, in the top grossing games are Indian studios that are part of that chart. So hopefully in the next 5 to 6 years or 10 years, we get to see that, if
Ramanjot?
not before.
Even I feel that in next 7 to 10 years, we should see that, because gaming has become a mainstream career option as well for the Indians now. But that is something, that is a shift that has happened in the last 5 years. So as people start picking up those skills, and as we see people from Europe and US coming back to India to build for India and for the globe, we will see the Indian games in top 10 very soon.
I think just picking up on what Nidhi and Manjot said, the time may be 5 to 7 years, but the desire is that it happens sooner than later, right? Of course, I think everyone feels that way, but I think the biggest change for me personally is to see just the way that the ecosystem has evolved over the last 4 years, right? And I think for me, IGDC was a testament to that last year. Where
I think so, yeah. I agree.
It was like a Comic-Con, right? Like, and that kind of craze will drive this market both in terms of the supply, the developer base, and the consumer base that it needs in terms of spend.
So I would disagree with the panel here a little. I am a more bullish guy on getting a top crossing games from India to the world very, very soon. I think it's just 1, 2, maybe 3 years away, not 5, 6, 7 years into the horizon. We have already seen, so there are a couple of factors why I base my decision in that light. One of the factors is we've already seen good success, right? With good success stories. Play Simple being definitely one of them. It's an Indian studio, of course. The founders left for the US, they returned back, they had capital, etc. So a bunch of these factors were sort of in their favor, but they were able to create some massive games, and they were already in the top crossing games in their genre. They still are today, by the way. The second part is with Stillfront, MTG getting exits to some of the studios in India, there's an enough amount of cash with these good amount of mentors that were previously managing their own product companies. Now with that product knowledge and with the fervor and the enthusiasm of the smaller indie developers, we are just one hit away from getting that top grossing title. So I believe we are looking for a next best hit game sooner than later. And there are multiple other studios in discussions where, founders getting an exit, having some cash, investing in other companies, being a mentor, that creates that ecosystem. We've already seen that take place in Finland, that takes place in Sweden, and a bunch of other countries. And I believe India is no different from those geographies when it comes to this. So I'm a little bullish on that.
Thanks, Saikat. I mean, so you heard on, we've spoken about what the Indian market is like, but everybody is saying that winter is coming, or winter is already here rather. So what are those metrics on which investors or publishers are going to look for? Because I think a lot of studios here will be interested to know, one, who do they approach, what do they approach, but as investors and publishers, what are you all looking for really? Do you want to go first?
I can go first. So gaming has always been counter-cyclical to the markets. Just take up mobile gaming, freemium. You don't have to pay anything to start playing a game. You just need internet, a smartphone, and you can play. As an investor, and specifically at early stage, there are lot in terms of evaluation metrics that we look at, and often games are pre-product. So when we invested in Studio Sera, which is now Kurukshetra as part of the first title, they didn't even have an MVP. So to talk about specific factors, team, how good the talent is, their capability to execute, how passionate they are. Gaming is a long investment. It's not that, are you looking to build a studio or just one game? If you're building a studio, you have a thesis, you will keep on iterating. One title fails, you build the next title. But if you're looking to just build a game, that vision won't really go a long way. And also the thesis. How specialized is your thesis? How much do you understand the market? Are you really tapping into a white space or not? It could be something as basic as changing pricing, something as basic as changing a theme, or tapping into a genre which has never worked in India. So look at Coin Master. Coin Master is a slot mechanic game, and it has been the top 5 grossing games in India consistently over the last 5 years. It has no Indian theme, but what they really tap into is the Indian psychology of loss aversion, and people are just addicted to that game, and people pay. And it's not ads, it's IAPs that Indians are paying for. And I think lastly, gaming is not just like art, it's a mix of art and science. So we need a mix of technical capability, also understanding design, art, and at the end of the day, tenacity is what works. So a mix of these things is what we'd ideally look for in a founder. And yeah, you can always reach out to us, we're happy to chat.
I would say, of course, team is very important. But whether it's whether it's winters or whether it's spring or whatever it is, product is something that nobody can take away from you. So our focus has always been to test out what and how good is the product, how well suited is it for the audience that they are building for. So and some of the metrics that we usually look at to test out that is retention, because that's the key metric that we believe test out the consumer's willingness to stick with the product, to pay for the product, right? So yeah, retention, that amount of time that the consumer is spending on the product is the most important thing for us. And like Nidhi mentioned, it's not about just the theme, or if you build in some Indian characters within the game, it's going to work. Indian audience is very demanding, and it has always been. So they like, in order for them to pay, the product has to be of the best quality, whether it comes to graphics or how smooth the game is, or monetization metric, everything. So whether it's winter, just focus on your product, keep building that game well. Monetization and funding will come your way.
I think, yeah, just to add to that, it's really not about winter as such. Again, this is one of the industries where, you can invest irrespective of cycles, and I think fundamentals always remain the same. Everyone all investors today look for the three core metrics: market opportunity, team, and product, right? And nobody can take any of those metrics away from you. But I think one thing is for any aspiring developers or founders when they go up, rarely, I don't think anyone has fixed playbooks in terms of will only invest when you have a certain number of users, or will only invest when you have a game ready. I think it's about how comfortable can you make the investor with what it is that you're trying to do, and do they believe in that vision. And oftentimes, I think it's also about founders and developers choosing the right investor in terms of who can fit in. Like in a lot of senses, someone may have portfolio companies in what you're trying to build, and that may not be a right fit. So it's important not to take that personally, but to look for people who would be wanting to to look at opportunities that way. So I think that's just one thing I feel, as game developers and founders who are trying to go and raise funds, that's something for you to kind of think about when approaching an investor.
Right. So gaming has been recession proof, right? I mean, we have seen that time and again in the previous cycles. It has always been recession proof. And in fact, if anything, after the recession, gaming has resurged with soaring heights that we have seen in COVID, that we are going to see this year. It really does not matter if you're getting less traction, if you are getting less inbounds from either investors or some other people. I think you will get what you basically need at the end of the day. On the other part, I would really highlight the fact that during these times, there are great startups that are being born. The entire generative AI segment that you're seeing is actually born in part because of the 2021 and what happened after the recession and a bunch of other things that happened in the macro environment. So it is opening doors. Please open your eyes, see what is happening in the world. Try and experiment with as many things as you can. Keep your processes extremely lean. And I'm sure you will sail through. Keep working hard on the product. Product is the king. Nobody can take that away from you, as was quoted by Ramanjot. So yeah, I wish you all the very best, and this was really great. Yeah.
Yeah. I know you all spoke about being in product and all that, but one of the questions that I had outside also was, and you all spoke about who to approach, what to do. But like we do something called an investor publisher connect at IGDC, which all of you are a part of, and we get pitch decks. I'm talking about a scenario where you conduct like a speed dating session or something, and we get pitch decks. And more often than not, we're going back to the developers saying, hey, listen, are you sure with the pitch deck? So what are some of those advice that you would give? Like, what are those basic things that people should look for when they approach an investor or a publisher? Like, I don't know, like some 5 basic things that you have to look out for when you get a deck ready for a pitch kind of a session.
I can go first. I think from an investor perspective, the first and foremost thing, know your market. Like, what are you building for? Who are you building for? If you're coming and pitching to an investor, you should know more than an investor knows about that specific category. So hyper specialized focus in a wide space is extremely important. And I think also showing that tenacity, that no matter what, we're going to scale through. And we have unique insights that is putting us in a position to build this better than 100 other people out there. So I think as an investor, it's very important for us to believe in the founder's vision. And it's also extremely important for the founder to believe in his or her own vision. So being a good storyteller is extremely important. And storytelling is also part of building a good gaming studio. And retention metrics, all of that comes later. If you're pre-product, that is irrelevant. If you have a product, then of course, Ramanjot mentioned, nobody can take your product away from you. Retention is extremely important.
Ramanjot?
Yeah, I think the 3 questions that should be answered is what, why, and how. Right, be very clear about what are you trying to build. Sometimes, there have been times when people have come up with a pitch of a PC game, and when we ask them that why a PC game, there's hardly a convincing answer that we get. So just be sure of what you are, building, what and why are you doing that, and be sure of your roadmap. Right, how are you going to get there? all the steps in place. Yeah, I think that gives us a lot of confidence, and that will give even the person who's making the pitch a lot of confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from a mental framework standpoint, storytelling as an exercise is very, very important, where you spent enough time looking at, different scenarios, because, you may have prepared something for an hour where you can, talk about what you're doing, but in reality, you may get less time, right? So you're put in a position where you're not comfortable to cover all topics. In that standpoint, it's very important to get the core things for you very, very clear, and to be able to present that, whether that's in a pitch deck format, whether that's in a video, however you are comfortable. Be original on that front, be completely embrace that personality of yours and bring that forward, right? And I think the one thing that we've seen overall is having a clear financial plan, which may not be something that you have to do at the first pitch, but it is something you have to go deeper into when there is mutual interest to work together, right? And having those, having that foresight to have projected all kinds of scenarios, that gives the investor comfort that you're not, not just from the perspective that you can build a good game, but you can run the commercials to kind of make sure you can put it out there in the world and, scale it. So I think those are some things that I feel would be very key.
In addition to all the points that have been covered by the previous panelists, I believe one thing that is extremely important is to also know who you are approaching for the investment. What is their investment thesis? What platforms or genres are they comfortable with? Because eventually, they are the ones that will bring a lot of support when it comes to when you are stuck in a particular aspect in your product development, your design, your technology, or understanding the limitations of it, etc. They are the ones that are going to help you stay with you through thick and thin, to help you understand and sail through those tides, right? So you need to understand who they have invested with, what are their investment criteria, how they look at investments, etc. And therefore make the entire storytelling narrative as an exercise based on that investor requirements, and then you basically eventually take on to that investor. So I think that was the only piece.
Yeah, we're running out of time. We'll open the floor for some Q&A. Thank you. And questions?
Hi. So this is just I'm just going to touch again on the points that you guys met. So for the developer to approach you, like, what would be the minimum requirement?
What is the minimum requirement for a developer to approach them?
Yep.
Be sure of the idea, I guess. Just have a just having a concrete idea itself is good enough, and to be sure of the process of building that idea, right? Once you have that clarity in mind, I think it's good enough to approach anyone, and to obviously, like everyone else has mentioned, to be sure of what the investor or the publisher themselves are interested in, what is their thesis. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, there are points where angels or, smaller, where you're working on certain increments and those people can also fit in, and then funds come in, right? So to understand what stage you are in terms of development and who to kind of go after. It's not that larger funds don't typically go for idea stage, like, even Nidhi mentioned, they don't go for idea stage, ventures to kind of back out. They do. But there are, these different stakeholders involved, and it's about who's going to go after what opportunity at that point of time. So have as many conversations, but have a, clear tracker in terms of you understanding. It's like you're finding a partner for you at that point, right? You don't want to let go of too much equity by getting a larger investor very early on, when you can kind of work with angels at that point of time as well. So that's just something.
Any more questions? Yeah. First there and then here.
Hey, hi, this is Prabhakaran. So my question to you is, where do you see the new AI tools, right, generative AI tools, as an investor, where you see that coming? Let's say, like, I don't know how many seen, like the Mid-Journey, right, the kind of realistic image that can bring up, like, without any artist, right? and the kind of models like nerf, right? Given a 2D rendering, it kind of creates your 3D models, right? So like, as a investor, where do you see these AI tools adding value, and are you already seeing adding value? And if a developer wants to know, like, where do you want them to focus on?
I can answer that. There are a lot of studios who are already using this, and most of the tools are free, right? But if you use Midjourney or DALI, you will find art themes that maybe some other person sitting in some other continent might also get. So what the largest global studios are doing is that they're building tools internally and training their own assets on those tools, so it's easier in terms of output and integration. But at the end of the day, it's still a facilitator. It's still at a very nascent stage. So studios don't look at it as an end product, but more as a storyboard or mood board item. And then maybe eventually it gets to a point where it's used as a final product for games.
Yeah. So, look, generative AI today is at a position where it is a happy accident, right? You put in some prompt, you just get something, you either adapt your storylines, your narratives according to the image that you're getting, or you retry it, right? These are all happy accidents. But I believe there are some major advancements a couple of months ago, maybe even 1 month ago, maybe today, I'm not sure, things are moving at a breakneck speed, where you would have more control over the open source tools. I'm not talking about the tools on which, so Midjourney is built on Stable Diffusion, right, at the end of the day. So I'm talking about the open source tool, which is Stable Diffusion. I think you will find more and more UI elements on these open source tools, and you can actually experiment with them. A lot of the developers have already used or have started using, as Nidhi was mentioning, have started using these tools as a part of their AI pipeline, wherein they are using it to either generate creatives, generate prototypes, generate ideations. So the work that was a 3 weeks or a 4 weeks work for an artist to create a pipeline or test it, to even test an idea, right? Because you are constantly testing prototypes and discussing amongst teammates. Even to test that idea, it used to take maybe 3 weeks or a 4 weeks period. Now it is just a matter of 1 hour, maybe 2 hours or 3 hours, right? So these are the areas where you can use AI art and AI art pipeline today effectively. Eventually, I believe in the next 6-8 months or so, you would have that control and that granularity where you would be able to access these tools. You would be able to train your own Stable Diffusion models and create your own pipeline, and you would be able to automate these pipelines. But having a track of these is exceptionally important.
I think just one thing to add to that, one very interesting thing that we were just thinking about. What does a Gen AI tool impact the workflow of a portfolio company? Say we give them X amount in funds, right? And they have the bandwidth to produce X number of games. With Gen AI or any of these tools that come into picture, the number of games that they churn can actually increase, right? And the number of things that they do can actually increase. Their resource consumption reduces significantly, right? That's the core of it. Now, I do believe that it's not just the larger studios that will do this. I feel even for the younger studios, the smaller studios building something and while having their own challenges, it is worth spending time to see how they can incorporate such tools into their own workflows and really kind of build on that. Because over time, it's going to become an industry standard. So, that's definitely something. So today, if you get that edge and you start working on it, definitely comes to your advantage.
Thank you. The other question, sorry, I have to really cut it off. I'm really sorry because we're running out of time and I don't want to keep you all here till 7 o'clock in the evening. So we want to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Saikat, Jayraj, Ramanjot, and Nidhi, for having flown here for a session, and hope this session really give it up to them, guys, because they've actually booked tickets, come all the way here to interact with the community, and I hope this session has been enriching for all of you. They're available for some more time if you want to ask them more questions. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.